So we will get started. I'm going to start with Aaron, and Aaron's going to be talking about the entrepreneurial mindset. So welcome, Aaron, and thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And I wanted to just, before we get too far into the content, if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do in this whole entrepreneurial area.
Sure. Yeah, thanks again for having me today. Um, yeah, so my background, I've been working in startups pretty much my whole career. Um, Started working on the investment side, so I worked in the venture capital industry for a number of years. But currently, uh, I run our LaunchLab software program. So we're based in Pittsburgh. We work with a number of early stage software companies to help them get to the next stage of growth. So typically when companies come to us, they have sort of their idea vetted out. They've done a lot of customer research and discovery. They either have a product that's in the market or they have a plan to get that product to market pretty quickly during the program. And then our goal is to sort of help them get from where they come in at, which is 0, 1, or a few customers, to really ramping up, not only knowing who their customer is, but starting to really execute on sales into that next stage of growth, which for most companies, that next stage is raising additional capital.
So good, thank you. That's great for background, so we kind of know your perspective and everything. And so talking about entrepreneurial mindset, right? We talk to our students a lot here at WVU about having this entrepreneurial mindset, and it's great, in theory, but in practice, Aaron, how does that work into what you do, and how do you interpret this entrepreneurial mindset?
Yeah, I meet probably too many entrepreneurs that come to me with ideas. So I have this idea. Let me tell you about my idea. And my first question for those entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs is, what problem are you solving? So what problem are you solving? And for entrepreneurs that pause before they answer that question, I quickly know that they haven't really thought about that enough. They have their idea and they're letting their idea take over. Part of the entrepreneurial mindset for me is always try to figure out, not necessarily like the idea that's going to change the world, but really looking at problems that are in the market, hopefully a problem that you know about. So if you think about design thinking, the first part is empathy. So the best part would be having experienced that problem yourself before. But if you haven't experienced that problem yourself, really knowing who that customer is and knowing that problem through the lens of your potential customer. So that's how I initially start thinking about the entrepreneurial mindset. Working at LaunchLab, I often tell people that are working with accelerators, or if you're doing anything tangential to startups, you also need to think and act like a startup. So we try to do a lot of those things at LaunchLab. We're not only coaching our companies to have this entrepreneurial mindset, but we're also trying to integrate those entrepreneurial thoughts into our daily activities. What I mean by that is, not being afraid to test different ways that we run the program. We're doing it all virtually now, like everyone else, but testing different methods, testing different processes, different technologies, different ways to outreach, different ways to try to find new entrepreneurs with the problems that they're solving. So that's a little bit about what kind of having the entrepreneurial mindset means to me.
Yeah, and I love hearing it from, the practitioner's perspective, and not that it's not great in theory, but hearing these actual applications of entrepreneurial mindset. And you mentioned design thinking, and that's another thing that we talk to our students a lot about. Can you explain what that means to you all and how you execute on design thinking?
Sure. Yeah. So I think that the whole concept or methodology around design thinking wasn't necessarily, it may have been started, but I don't think it had sort of startups in mind. So I think that startup methodology have stolen, great ideas from how, great traditional companies like Toyota has, thought about design thinking, but it's the same concept, right? So I think it starts with empathy. So really knowing the problem. Hopefully, as entrepreneurs, we look for entrepreneurs that have experienced the problem directly. But if you don't, then knowing from customers. And then it's just sort of that, testing, talking to customers, building, not building too much, but building just enough to be able to test in the market, and kind of that iterative process. So that's what we take companies through at Alpha Lab, where we're challenging them to test different ideas, to test different ways of acquiring customers, to test different customer channels, and to do that sort of rapidly. So you quickly learn. You learn, gosh, that was terrible. We shouldn't have tried that. Or, I think we were right. We were right testing this channel. Let's go deeper. Let's try something else within this customer channel or product that we're testing. So it's that way of not really sort of locking into, this is how the problem's always been solved, this is how we're going to do it, but really thinking about contrarian ways or different ways to approach tackling a problem.
Aaron, do you ever have anyone that you're working with as far as these entrepreneurs or these innovators? Do you have anyone who gives you pushback? Do they struggle with changing their mindset or incorporating design thinking into the way that they're working?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes we try to filter. We try to test a lot of that out. So we have a pretty rigorous interview process where we have a couple hundred or whatever applicants to our program, and we select a few. And that's one of the big things that we're trying to kind of vet as we're evaluating companies, is how strong of a conviction do these entrepreneurs have towards sort of the bigger vision of the problem that they're solved, but also how willing are they to sort of change the ways that they're going to get to sort of tackling that vision with different tests and kind of, and they may go about it a different way, but they're still trying to solve the big picture problem. So that's what we're trying to guide companies with. So, being too much of a stickler on, well, this is the way it's got to be done because this is the way it's always been done, or it worked this way before, so it should work this way. We try to coach that out of entrepreneurs if we get sense of that. But yeah, we see it sometimes.
Yeah, I'm sure, because it's a skill, and it's something, like I said, we try to encourage our students here to think with this entrepreneurial mindset. But if they don't have, a product or an innovation or something to work with, just kind of saying randomly, you need to have an entrepreneurial mindset can be a bit of a challenge. Do you think it's easier or harder to incorporate this mindset into what you're working on if you have an idea already, or if you don't have an idea and you're just trying to adopt this mindset?
It can be learned. I always encourage aspiring entrepreneurs to, if you're trying to think about how to develop this mindset, or never had a startup before, spend some time with a startup. And that doesn't mean go take that on as a profession, or that needs to be my full-time job when I'm done with college or whatever. Startups need a lot of help. Startups, sometimes they're 1, 2, 3 person companies, and they're leading the sales, the product, the fundraising, the customer service, customer outreach, all of those pieces, and all of those areas, they need help, or consultants or interns, or whatever you want to call them, to help build that business. So if I always encourage students that are looking to sort of understand what startups are all about, building the entrepreneurial mindset, to spend some time working with a startup to sort of learn how things are done. You get to do a lot of stuff, and really learn quickly. And that's how I found the best way to just start to build that mindset.
Yeah, and that's great. And you kind of touched on this already, but I wanted to ask it again. How do you transition from an idea to implementation?
Talking, getting out there, talking to who your customer is. That's kind of the standard answer, but I can talk a little bit more about that. It's we work with companies that are selling sort of B2C. They're selling e-commerce or whatever channels to an end consumer. We're working with a number of businesses that are trying to sell to small businesses, large enterprises, kind of everything in between, and it's all the same. You need to know your customer, your end user, almost as well as that customer feels that problem. So, and that can only be done by going out and talking to customers. It's a tough thing to do. It's a tough thing to, I have this great idea, kind of what's the next step. I often hear, well, I need to build a product. I need to kind of build the product to go and test. And don't waste your time doing that until you've sort of validated that indeed is a problem that's worth a lot of the time and effort and cost to build a product to go out and solve. We've taken companies into Alpha Lab that have just sort of validated that problem, and the next step is to build a product. That company is a lot further along than, I had an idea, I built a product, now I need to sell it, because you don't know what the product is, or sort of what it's going to be used, or how your end user is going to, if they want it or if they care about it, those things like that. So, getting out and talking to who your customer is going to be, I think is the next step in, implementing and executing.
Yeah, and that's great advice for students who are considering being entrepreneurs, or they maybe have an idea for an innovation now, is to really talk to people to find out what is the problem that they're solving. Last question, do you have any advice for these students who are going to be graduating and maybe want to be in, Alpha Lab or somewhere else to house their innovation?
Yeah, like I mentioned before, joining a startup is a great step. It's not a students often think of it as like a binary decision, like I need to either join a startup or go work for a big company. You can do both. You can spend time sort of understanding if working with startups or doing your own startup is something that you want to do, while you're going after a career path with a large company or something like that. That's fine. Kind of developing and honing that entrepreneurial mindset can happen, whether doing a business, starting a business as a full-time job, or whether you're just kind of, learning that through startups on the side or something like that. So if anyone that's interested can reach out to me. We have a number of companies in our current cohort of Alpha Lab and Alpha Lab Gear that Stacy will talk about in a bit, that are working on interesting challenges, solving interesting problems, and that can be a good way as well to learn more.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for the offer for our students to reach out to you for further information. And I'm sure they'll take you up on that. So thank you, Aaron, for being here for us.